Have you ever felt like something inside you was changing, but you had no words to explain it? You started waking up at night for no reason. Certain people no longer felt right. Your body seemed to reject situations that once felt normal, and the silence became sacred. But when you tried to speak, they called it confusion. When you tried to change, they called it instability. When you cried, they said you were too emotional. And when you became quiet, they said you were distant. So you began to wonder, am I going crazy? No, you were never crazy. Your soul was waking up, and this awakening is not something the world knows how to handle. We live in a society that fears the invisible, that medicates what it doesn't understand, that silences anything it can't label. But the soul doesn't follow labels. It moves in symbols, it speaks in frequencies, and when it begins to rise, everything around you starts to collapse, not as punishment, but as liberation. The old you can't survive the awakening. That's why it hurts, that's why it isolates you. That's why you felt like a stranger in your own life. But listen to this, you were not breaking. You were being realigned, because awakening isn't a light switch. It's a fire that burns away illusions, that collapses false identities, and that forces the soul to emerge, raw, radiant, and whole. It's terrifying when it starts, because you can't go back. The dreams become clearer. The words of others start to sound hollow. You begin to remember things that no one told you, but you just know. And when you try to explain it, people look at you as if you've lost your mind. But what they don't realize is that you've finally found your essence. So many awakened souls were once called unstable, delusional, eccentric. But in truth, they were ahead of their time. They were sensitive to a truth this world still resists. And maybe you are one of them. Maybe your soul has been waiting for this moment, this exact one, where you hear someone say, "Oh, it was never madness. It was the sacred reconfiguration of everything you thought you were, so you could remember who you've always been." Stay with me until the end of this video, because everything that's about to be said will feel like a letter written to your soul, a message you buried long ago, and now it's time to remember. Breathe. You are safe. You are not alone, and you were never broken. The spiritual awakening doesn't start with a miracle. It starts with a breakdown. One day, the job you've always had feels like a prison. Your relationships feel hollow. Your smile starts to feel fake. And even your own name sounds distant. You begin to disconnect, not from life, but from the illusion of who you were told to be. And this is where the confusion begins, because no one teaches us that awakening can look like collapse. No one tells us that rebirth often arrives dressed as crisis. You start crying for no reason. You feel exhausted even after sleeping. You begin to question everything, your beliefs, your goals, even your place in the universe. This isn't depression. It's the soul saying, "You've been asleep for too long." Helena Blavatsky wrote, "The soul never dies, but she forgets, until she begins to remember again." And that moment of remembering is the very earthquake we call awakening. But here's the truth they never told you. Your soul has been patiently waiting, watching you live a life built on expectations, programming, and fear. And now, she refuses to stay silent. That's why your body reacts. That's why you feel a pull to isolate. That's why you're not interested in fitting in anymore. Because the awakening begins with disidentification, a shedding of everything that is not you, not the real you, not the ancient, luminous, infinite essence that's always been there. And the process is violent to the ego. It feels like losing your mind, but you're actually regaining your soul. Carl Jung once said, "Enlightenment is not imagining figures of light, but making the darkness conscious." That's what awakening demands, that you sit with the shadows, that you feel what you've avoided, that you face the unbearable truth. You were never truly yourself, until now. And that's why so many give up. Because it hurts, because it isolates, because it turns your world inside out. But what if this is exactly what you needed? What if this chaos is the soul cleaning the mirror, so you can finally see clearly? You were not designed to be numb. You were not born to conform. You came here to remember. And yes, remembering hurts at first, because every truth you awaken to kills a lie you once called home. But don't fear the collapse. Fear a life where your soul never speaks again. In ancient teachings, awakening was described as death before death. Because the ego dies, so the soul can rise. You lose the appetite for what is fake. You become allergic to noise. You stop explaining yourself because you realize deep inside that no explanation will ever fit a truth this ancient. And just like that, everything changes. You begin to notice synchronicities. You feel energy in rooms. You crave nature, stillness, meaning. You no longer chase. You attract. You align. You become. So if the world tells you you're not well, you can now answer, I'm not unwell. I'm finally becoming whole. Because you're not breaking, you're being revealed. And the soul, once awake, never sleeps again. There is a pattern that repeats itself through history. A pattern where the ones who see beyond the veil are labeled as unstable, dangerous, or insane. The prophets, the oracles, the mystics, they didn't fit into the mold, and so they were silenced. Joan of Arc heard voices. Teresa of Avila had visions. Edgar Cayce entered trance states to heal. Helena Blavatsky translated truths that no religion dared touch. They were ridiculed, attacked, erased. But what if they were just like you? What if your sensitivity, your dreams, your inner knowing isn't a flaw, but a continuation? The world has always feared the ones who remember, because those who remember can't be controlled, can't be distracted, can't be seduced by the noise. And that's threatening to systems built on obedience, to cultures based on denial, to people who live asleep and call it normal. So they came for the mystics. They burned the witches. They locked the visionaries in institutions. They called the intuitive ones mentally ill. They pathologized the sacred, but the soul never forgets. And now, in this lifetime, you feel something awakening. You start seeing beyond appearances. You feel truths you can't explain. You sense energies before people speak. And again, the same voices come. You're imagining things. You're overreacting. You're too sensitive. But your heart knows better. Your soul whispers, this has happened before. The collective memory of being silenced lives in many old souls. That's why you doubt yourself. That's why you hide your visions. That's why you fear being misunderstood. But here's the truth. You were never meant to blend in. You were born to be a frequency breaker, a code carrier, a mirror. And mirrors aren't loved. They reflect what others refuse to see. That's why awakening feels lonely. Because truth creates distance. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're no longer willing to lie to yourself. And this world still teaches people to run from their souls, to numb their emotions, to distrust their own intuition. So when you begin to awaken, you look strange to the asleep. But being misunderstood is not a curse, it's a sign you're evolving. The mystics were never wrong, they were just early. They arrived with truths that the world wasn't ready to hear. And now it's your turn. It's your turn to feel the pain and still speak, to walk alone but never in shame, to embody your soul, even when the world only understands the body, because the same world that once called you too much will one day look to you for answers. Let this sink in. You are not broken. You are breaking patterns. You are not lost. You are leaving the illusion. You are not crazy. You are remembering something they tried to make you forget, and that is sacred. If you're watching this right now, there's a reason. Something inside you is shifting, and your soul is trying to tell you it's already begun. But awakening doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives in whispers, in strange sensations, in quiet dissolutions of everything you thought you were. Here are 7 subtle signs that your soul is awakening, even if the world doesn't recognize them. 1. You feel disconnected from your old self. You look at your life, your job, your relationships, your habits, and feel like a guest in your own story. Things that once defined you now feel foreign. You're not empty, you're evolving. 2. Time no longer makes sense. You feel like days pass too fast, or not at all. You lose track of hours in silence. Moments of déjà vu increase. It's not confusion, it's a shift in your inner clock. Your soul doesn't measure time the way the world does. 3. You crave solitude without sadness. You no longer feel the need to fill space with noise. You walk alone, not because you're isolating, but because you're listening to something deeper, something sacred. 4. You begin to see meaning in everything. A song plays at the exact moment you need it. A stranger says the words you were afraid to speak. You start seeing numbers, symbols, signs, and they speak to you like an ancient language returning. Synchronicity becomes your new logic. 5. Emotions become intense, but not chaotic. You cry for no reason. You feel waves of love, then waves of grief, but they pass like clouds. Your emotions no longer define you. They purify you. 6. You feel called to release. People leave. Habits dissolve. You begin decluttering your space, your phone, your thoughts. Not out of fear, but out of knowing, this no longer matches my frequency. 7. You start remembering what was never taught. You have thoughts, dreams, visions that no book gave you. You know things without knowing how. You feel connected to truths older than your name. It's not imagination, it's soul memory reactivating. If you nodded your head to even one of these signs, your soul is already awake, even if your mind doesn't understand it yet, because awakening doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for the world's approval. It simply arrives, like a storm that clears the sky, like a note that was always waiting in your heart to be played. And yes, it's disorienting. Yes, it hurts. But you are not alone in this. There are thousands of us scattered across the world, awakening in silence, rebuilding reality from the inside out. Let this be a reminder. You're not sensitive. You're tuned. You're not lost. You're being rerouted. You're not going crazy. You're going home. Let this moment anchor in your memory. The day you stopped doubting what your soul already knew, you were never supposed to fit in. You were meant to remember. And every sign you've ignored, every time you felt like something was off, every inner whisper you silenced, was your soul gently knocking and asking to be heard again. There comes a moment, after the breakdown, after the tears, after the silence, when you realize you're not the same anymore. You still walk through the same streets. You still speak the same language. But something inside you has shifted. Your frequency has changed. You start feeling things before they happen. You enter a room and sense the energy like a current. You speak less, but mean more. You crave simplicity. You start choosing what feels right, even if it makes no logical sense. This is life after the awakening. And no, it's not perfect. It's not a utopia, but it's true. Because once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. Here's what begins to change. You stop needing external validation. You no longer ask the world to approve your path, because you now walk with an inner compass, not a map given by others. You stop performing, stop pleasing, stop explaining, and instead, you begin embodying. Your sensitivity becomes your superpower. What once felt like a burden, your emotions, your visions, your dreams, now become tools of perception. You feel the collective before it reacts. You see patterns in people that they haven't even seen in themselves. You start reading energy instead of words. You become radically honest with yourself. No more pretending, no more forcing. You'd rather lose something fake than keep wearing a mask, because you understand peace is the new success, presence is the new power, and alignment is the new currency. You attract differently. You no longer chase. People, opportunities, and moments begin to arrive on their own, not by effort, but by resonance. Your frequency speaks louder than your voice now. You don't need to prove anything. You simply become the message. Old versions of you begin to fall away. You may outgrow friendships. You may release places you once loved, but you don't mourn these losses the same way, because a deeper part of you knows this version of me has completed its cycle. And so you bless it. You bow to it. And you let it go. You start finding beauty in stillness. The silence that once terrified you now feels like home. You begin to feel the divine not in temples or books, but in leaves, in tears, in breath. You stop asking for signs and start becoming the sign. And here's something powerful. You begin to recognize others like you. A glance, a word, an energy. You cross paths with other awakened souls, and even without speaking, you feel it. We've been here before. You also begin to live slower, but more fully. You stop rushing, you eat differently, you listen with your body, not just your ears. You begin to honor your temple, your body, your time, your energy, not out of fear, but out of love. Yes, the world still spins fast. Yes, chaos still exists, but now you carry your own frequency. You become the still point in the storm. You become the calm within the fire. You become someone you would have needed in your darkest night. And that beloved soul is the real purpose of the awakening, not to escape the world, but to transform the way you walk through it, from fear to presence, from seeking to remembering, from noise to vibration. You now live from the soul, not as a belief but as a state of being. Close your eyes for a moment, not to escape, but to return. You've just traveled through memories, truths and symbols that your mind may not fully grasp, but your soul does, because it was never about learning something new. It was about remembering. And now, we invite you to integrate. Sit with your back straight, feet on the ground, hands resting gently on your chest. Take a deep breath in, hold, exhale slowly, and again, breathe in the silence, breathe out the masks. Let your body become still. Let your thoughts fade like background noise, and listen. Listen to that faint hum beneath the noise of the world, the vibration that has always been there. The ancient pulse that is you. You've never been lost. You've only been buried under layers of noise, expectations, and fear. But now, you're being uncovered, layer by layer, breath by breath, truth by truth. This is not a moment, it's a rebirth, and every rebirth requires a ritual. So silently within you repeat these words. I remember who I am, I honor what I've survived, I release what I am not, and I reclaim my soul's light, without shame. Let these words vibrate in you. Let them echo through the timelines. Let them reach every part of you that was silenced, that was forgotten, that was called crazy, because now you know it was never madness. It was memory reactivating. It was your essence returning. And from this place, you begin again, not as someone new, but as someone real. Now, open your eyes, gently, softly, as if seeing the world for the first time. Notice the difference, not outside you, but within you. That shift, that quiet knowing, that calm in your chest, that is your soul, present, awake, home. You no longer need to search for signs, because now you are the sign, the reminder, the living proof that awakening is not a myth, it's a frequency, and you carry it. Wherever you go, whatever you do, whatever you speak, the vibration goes with you, and the world, even if it doesn't understand, feels it. So if they call you strange, if they say you've changed, if they question your silence, just smile because you remember. And now we leave you with this. They called it madness, but it was the soul rising. If this video touched something deep in you, comment below, it was never madness. Let others know they are not alone in this path, because somewhere, someone needs this truth, and your words may be the bridge that saves them. From this moment on, live as one who remembers. Live as one whose soul has awakened, and above all, never again apologize for being sacred. Never again shrink to be understood by those still asleep. Your soul has waited lifetimes for this. Welcome back.